I'd like to talk about something a little challenging, and that is the nature of the closed mind. There's something strange about awakening, and I know some of you have gotten here, and realizing that as you are starting to question your belief structures, as you are starting to formulate the new version of you. Dabrowski calls this the model of positive disintegration. As you move to psychological integration and states of identification that are aligned with values that you, the highest version of you, want to adhere to. You go through this rebuilding process. And in this model of positive disintegration, Dabrowski says that the majority of humans are at level 1. They're unified. They are perhaps more dogmatic, more reactive, more right and wrong. Tell me what to think. Tell me what to do. And there's no internal conflict for them until perhaps they encounter a challenge in their life, a dark night of the soul, and then they enter into level 2. And level 2 is a transition level. But some will go back. They will regress, or they will collapse inward on themselves, especially without proper grounding or support on their journey. And many people don't make it to level 3, according to Dabrowski's model. But when they make it to level 3 and level 4, they become a model of themselves that at level 1 they never thought they could be. And in this process of disintegration of the lower self and transforming into the higher self, to speak in those terms, although it's not so linear and it's not so black and white, there is this interpretation of the world through this lens of what's right for me, what aligns with my truth, what does the authentic version of me think about this, feel about this. And when you are living a life at level 1, there is no pondering of this sort for most people, if at all. Instead, it is, where am I going for dinner? What movie am I going to see? What's next on my Netflix binge this weekend? What am I going to buy with my tax return? And it's just jumping from one task to another, one hobby to another, one adventure to another, but the internal world is relatively consumed with materialism, consumerism, culturally dependent, of course. The life, the structure, the order that they were born into. And they optimize their reality based on the set of circumstances that, like a caste system, were laid out for them. They live and die experiencing at their fingertips with their 5 senses exactly what was written in the biology textbooks. what was shown to them by the people who came before them. And apparently, there's a level 5. And getting to level 5 in Dabrowski's model is extraordinarily rare and includes oneness, an open heart aligning with service, compassion, Christ consciousness type of endearments, but in psychological terms. Because Dabrowski was a psychiatrist / psychologist who lived during a period where I would argue most people were unawake. When I first heard about this model, I was reading Living with Intensity to understand my own neurodivergence, as well as other people in my life. And this is before I was a coach for the gifted and talented, and those who were also on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. And when I first read this model, The Positive Disintegration Theory by Dabrowski, I actually was uncomfortable by it. Because as the model is synthesized, most people will live and die never ascending through the levels. Most people do not have the sufficient amount of pressure or inquiry or desire. That's a big part of it too. Like, how exhausting is it for those of you who have ascended through these levels? And I know some of you are listening, and I know I've got some number 5s on there too. I know it. I feel it. It's exhausting to rebuild yourself from the inside out. It's challenging to go through the dark night of the soul and look at yourself to understand how the I, the lower version of you, had actually created everything in your life. That level of personal responsibility is daunting. It's so much easier to be given abundance, your manifestations, to ask permission, to submit to some authority outside of you. And it's a lot harder to recognize that when you step into sovereignty, genuine sovereignty, you are the one that creates, that signs up, that participates, that says yes, that says no, that puts up boundaries or not, that creates these karmic cycles and these loops in your life for which to experience the beauty of the material world. And it can be quite fun and exhilarating, but also challenging when you're trying to take the reins. And that level of self-acceptance, of seeing your part, can be tricky for some. And so when I first encountered this model, and the stance was 65 to 85% of people will just be at level 1 for their entire lives. I didn't want to accept it because I don't want to believe that the majority of people will just not question where they're at, who they are, and what they're making in their life. I remember talking to a former partner after my spiritual awakening really started, and I got really into consciousness, and I talked to them about that. And they said to me, unironically, and they meant it, but it's so tiring to be conscious. Almost as though, why would you want to do that? It's so exhausting, what you're talking about. And then I come across commenters on TikTok recently. You may have come here from this thread, actually, because I was referring to people to this podcast. But essentially, it was a beautiful video story about Philip K. Dick and talking about his work. If you're not familiar with him, he is a famous sci-fi author, contributed to great works like Blade Runner and Scanner Darkly and others. And when he was writing sci-fi in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, he was incredible in terms of his ability to have insight into AI and timelines and alternate worlds and corporations taking over and implants into the mind and societies with Orwellian type of tech, but also cool tech. It wasn't always Orwellian style. It wasn't always dystopian. But it was intriguing. And I came across Philip K. Dick before my awakening. Well before. I mean, like decades before. And there was this quote that stuck with me. Reality is that which doesn't go away when you stop believing in it. Reality is that which does not go away when you stop believing in it. I believe that people can change, and there's no limit on the amount of change that a person can have, that they can start from level 0 and grow into level 5. I believe they can be at level 1 for 50 plus years of their life and have a transformative experience and go to level 5, making up time with the wisdom of the years that they've learned about themselves, to really see the patterns that have been entrenched in their beingness. Dabrowski and others do not believe this is true. I respect their belief, but I still hold my own. When I came across that quote by Philip K. Dick, I knew it was important, and it was a seed, like pop culture often is. On one hand, we have conspiracy theorists that say pop culture is inundated with messages and symbols and indoctrinations. And for me, the way I personally see it is it's got nuggets in there that if you want to go from level 1 to level 2, you could. And I actually see this as friendly, because a truly dark society would not want you to question anything, in my personal opinion. It is the act of questioning that creates rebellion. And through the process of rebellion, if you can make it through the other side without upending the structures of society that are actually to your benefit, what you'll find is there was a reason for everything. Just because you didn't understand it, just because you contextualized it as something that was frightening or scary, doesn't mean that it didn't have a purpose that was serving you at that time. And it also does not mean that anybody could have sat you down and given you the information and your mind be able to handle it in the first pass. Sometimes it takes levels of awareness and awakening. And through that process, it's actually kind to not info dump everything at you. When I watched the TikTok about Philip K. Dick and his work, it was saying that he was a visionary and that a lot of his work was rumored to be autobiographical. He was writing about himself. And eventually he came out and pretty much said as much. But he struggled with what he saw because he was way early for his time. And there was a clip of him giving a speech, and it was in the 70s. And he was trying to communicate to the crowd that there were multiple timelines, that one of them had been edited in the past, and that there was some dangerous territory that he was trying to warn people about, and that a supercomputer simulation had taken over. And this was a time before people really had home computers. So you can imagine if you had a lot of level 1s sitting there listening, how they might react at that space and time point. There was even a woman who was sneering / laughing in the audience because of the absurdity of what he was trying to say and communicate. Like a supercomputer. What is timelines? Who is this guy? Because he was being very real and very serious. And now, if he hadn't, excuse me, if he had not committed suicide, perhaps he would be scrolling on TikTok and finding people like myself and others teaching about quantum shifting, slipping into parallel worlds, and perhaps there would be a part of him that would feel vindicated. But where I'm at least circling with some people that are very close-minded, I still receive the snickering and the sneering, and it's pretty unbelievable how closed some people are. There are many people who are open to quantum shifting, and there is a select sample within that segment who are already shifting and they know it, and they don't have to prove it to anybody. And they're excited by it. They're exploring it. Sometimes they're a little fearful have some trepidation about it. But then there are others like myself that try to teach about it. And it's interesting having seen everything that I've seen. And in terms of quantum shifting, and to watch people respond to me who clearly have had no exposure outside of the mainstream indoctrination that they were raised with. And I've been there. I was that person too, at some point, early in my journey. So I actually have compassion. I'm actually more interested. Was Dabrowski right? What percentage of people are completely closed-minded that they would launch attacks, verbal or even just insinuations? And some might even say with cruelty, although not always. Sometimes it's just healthy skepticism. At what point does society really shift? At what point does the capacity for human reasoning start to actually expand beyond just a sprinkle of level 5s, according to Dabrowski? It's so rare to get to level 5 when Dabrowski made this model. At what point do we begin to see the shift? Because I believe it's already happened. And I believe that it is ongoing. And I also believe that it's like Dr. Stephen Greer talks about, where we need a critical mass of awakeness. And then it just like a flip of a switch changes reality. I like to think of it like pinging the morphogenic field. If you're familiar with it, at first it starts with a little bit of momentum where people in isolation discover something like quantum shifting. And through the collective consciousness, we hold the fragments individually. We don't even have to communicate with each other. We could have all of our systems, telecommunication systems, offline, and it wouldn't matter, because the field itself actually contains the imprint. And after a proportion of some critical mass has been met, even if the entire world was dark, even if it was in the most horrible, suppressive, oppressive conditions, what would happen is that there would be a shift, because it is our birthright. And so no matter where you're at, no matter the conditions, if you ever get locked out of a world, all you have to do is hold the light inside of you and wait for the shift. And I also believe that when we keep the faith about our fellow humans and their capacity, even when the world sometimes causes us to doubt that faith, and we release the need to make it happen with a certain individual in a certain amount of time, but we just hold the space to allow for them to shift. that at some point, effortlessly, we will see the results. Because the energetic vibration matching to faith is more powerful, is more robust than any seed of darkness or waiting. To all my level 5s and level 4s and even level 3s, because even that is supposedly extremely rare. Thank you for being here, for witnessing this journey, my journey, our journey, and for your contributions.